A mother's desperate plea to feed her crying baby on a flight turns into a nightmare. Sit down and deal with it, snaps flight attendant Vikram as tensions soar. With security closing in and a viral video exposing the truth, Amara's fight for justice could bring down an airline. Will she triumph? In the pre-dawn stillness of a modest apartment in the bustling coastal city of Sariwan, Kalaya, Amara Suryani stirred at 3:30 a.m., her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The humid air clung to her skin as she checked her meticulously packed carry-on bag for the fifth time. Diapers, wipes, powdered formula, a spare outfit for her 4-month-old son, Kale, and a small stuffed elephant toy he loved to clutch. Her husband, Rian Pratama, was halfway across the continent in the gleaming metropolis of Yandra, negotiating a high-stakes tech deal that could redefine their future. Today, Amara was embarking on her first solo flight with Kale, a journey to the northern city of Laraya to surprise her grandmother for her 70th birthday. Amara glanced at Kale, nestled in his car seat, his tiny chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Her best friend, Lila, was waiting outside in a beat-up sedan, headlights cutting through the misty darkness. As Amara loaded the stroller and bags into the trunk, her mind drifted to the upcoming milestone she and Rian had been planning, a vow renewal ceremony to celebrate their 5th anniversary. Set to take place in 2 weeks at the luxurious Orchid Haven Resort in Sariwan. Relatives from across Kalaya and beyond were flying in, and every detail had been painstakingly arranged. This quick trip to Laraya was meant to be a joyful detour, a chance to honor her grandmother before the big celebration. Little did Amara know, this routine flight would spiral into a crucible of heartbreak, defiance, and a corporate reckoning that would shake an entire industry. Sariwan International Airport thrummed with its usual chaos at 5 a.m., families lugging overstuffed suitcases, business travelers sipping overpriced coffee, and tourists snapping photos of the terminal's vibrant murals. Amara navigated the crowds with Kale's stroller, her eyes sharp with the quiet vigilance she'd honed as a woman of mixed heritage in a country where subtle biases often lingered beneath polite smiles. She had booked a ticket with Horizon Air, a Chilean airline that boasted passenger-first service and sleek, modern aircraft. Its direct flight to Laraya promised a smooth 3-hour journey, minimizing the stress of traveling with an infant. From the moment she reached the check-in counter, something felt off. The agent, a young man with a crisp uniform, barely glanced at her as he processed her ticket. His tone was clipped, his instructions curt, as if her presence, with a stroller and a baby, was an inconvenience. Amara brushed it aside, chalking it up to early morning fatigue. She murmured a polite "thank you" and maneuvered toward the special assistance line, where she noticed a faint frown from another staff member as she approached. Swallowing her unease, she reminded herself to stay calm. She'd faced worse slights before and always emerged with her dignity intact. At the gate, the pre-boarding call for families and those needing extra time crackled over the intercom. Amara stepped forward, Kale gurgling softly in her arms. The gate attendant, a woman with a tight bun and an impatient air, scanned her boarding pass without a word. No safe travels, no acknowledgement of the baby. Just a quick nod and a gesture to move along. Amara forced a smile, clutching Kale a little tighter as she made her way down the jet bridge. The jet bridge was a flurry of activity, flight attendants sorting supplies, a pilot barking orders into a headset, and a maintenance worker hauling a toolbox. Amara paused to collapse Kale's stroller, juggling her son's weight while deciphering the latch mechanism. She glanced at a passing flight attendant, hoping for a moment of assistance, but the woman breezed by without a glance. Another attendant, a woman whose name tag read Vikram, paused briefly, her eyes flicking over Amara and Kale with a detached curiosity before she continued on, carrying a stack of blankets. Amara's shoulders tensed as she folded the stroller one-handed, her back straining under the effort. No one offered help. No one even acknowledged her struggle. Inside the aircraft, a state-of-the-art A320 with plush seats and personal entertainment screens, Amara found her aisle seat near the front, a deliberate choice for quick access to the galley or lavatory if Kale needed her. She settled Kale into his harness, whispering a soft prayer for a peaceful flight. The cabin filled with passengers, a mix of business travelers in crisp suits, families returning from vacations, and a few elderly passengers moving slowly down the aisle. Amara caught the eye of an older woman across the aisle, who offered a warm smile at Kale's chubby cheeks. It was the first flicker of kindness Amara had felt since entering the airport, and she returned the smile gratefully. As boarding continued, Amara noticed a young man struggling to stow his oversized bag in the overhead bin. Despite holding Kale, she leaned forward to help, but before she could, Vikram snapped. Sir, if you can't manage your luggage, it needs to be checked. The harshness in her tone made Amara flinch. It was the same attendant who'd ignored her earlier, and something about her demeanor, cold, almost disdainful, set her on edge. She pushed the feeling down, focusing on Kale, who was starting to squirm as the plane's engines roared to life. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom, announcing their departure. Amara secured Kale's harness and prepared his pacifier to ease the pressure in his ears during takeoff. Moments after the plane lifted off, Kale began to fuss, his tiny face scrunching in discomfort. Amara rocked him gently, offering the pacifier, but his cries grew louder. A passenger a few rows back muttered loudly, "Why do people bring babies on planes? They should have separate flights for that." The word stung, but Amara kept her focus on Kale, determined to soothe him. 15 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign turned off, and the beverage service began. Kale's cries turned hungry, a familiar wail that tugged at Amara's heart. She reached into her bag for the formula and bottle, planning to ask for hot water to mix it properly. Pressing the call button, she waited, watching the flight attendants push their cart down the aisle. Vikram passed her row without stopping. "Excuse me," Amara called softly, but she didn't even turn her head. Amara pressed the call button again, thinking she might not have heard. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Kale's cries grew piercing, drawing glares from nearby passengers. The older woman across the aisle leaned over, her voice gentle. "Maybe try waving them down, dear." Amara nodded, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment as she raised her hand. Finally, Vikram stopped, her expression one of barely concealed irritation. "Yes," she said, her tone sharp. "I need hot water for my baby's bottle," Amara said politely, cradling Kale. "He's hungry, and I just need a small cup to mix his formula." Vikram's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, we can't just hand out hot water. It's a safety issue. You'll have to wait until the beverage service is done." Her voice carried a dismissive edge that made Amara's stomach twist. "I've gotten hot water on flights before," Amara replied, keeping her tone calm. "If there's a policy, I understand, but could I maybe go to the galley to prepare it myself?" She rolled her eyes, as if Amara's request was absurd. "We're busy. You'll wait." Without another word, she pushed the cart away. Amara's heart sank as Kale's cries intensified. The older woman across the aisle frowned in sympathy, pressing her own call button in an attempt to help. Amara shook her head, not wanting to escalate the situation, but the tension in the cabin was palpable. Passengers whispered, some casting judgmental glances, others looking uncomfortable. A young woman a few rows back, named Sari, stood up, her voice firm. "I have some bottled water and extra formula if you need it," she offered, pulling a small container from her bag. Before Amara could respond, Vikram stormed back. "Ma'am, sit down," she barked at Sari. "Passengers can't exchange items like that. It's against Horizon Air policy." Sari's eyes flashed with anger. "It's baby formula and sealed water. I'm trying to help a mother feed her child." Vikram's jaw tightened. "I said no. If you don't comply, I'll alert the captain." Her voice was loud enough to draw gasps from nearby passengers. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the cabin, and Amara felt the weight of every stare. Something dangerous was brewing, a confrontation that could spiral beyond a mere argument, threatening not just her dignity, but her safety. The cabin of the Horizon Air flight to Laraya buzzed with a tense undercurrent as Amara Suryani rocked her crying son, Kale, trying to soothe him with gentle whispers. The refusal of the flight attendant, Vikram, to provide hot water for Kale's bottle had left her humiliated, her polite requests met with cold dismissal. The air felt thick with judgment. Some passengers glared, others whispered, and a few, like the older woman across the aisle and the young woman named Sari, radiated quiet support. But the situation was spiraling, and Amara sensed a growing danger, not just to her dignity but to her safety and that of those who dared to defend her. Kale's cries grew sharper, piercing the cabin's hum. Amara pressed the call button again, her hands trembling but her resolve firm. She wasn't asking for much, just a small act of compassion to feed her hungry infant. Vikram returned, her face a mask of irritation. "Ma'am, I told you to wait," she snapped, loud enough for nearby passengers to turn their heads. "The baby's crying is disturbing everyone. Please control him." Amara's chest tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm trying to feed him. If you could just let me use the galley to mix his formula, I can calm him down. It's been over 20 minutes." Vikram's eyes narrowed, and her tone took on a menacing edge. You're not going anywhere near the galley. It's a restricted area, and we're not your personal staff. Sit down and deal with it. Her words carried a threat, a subtle warning that made Amara's skin prickle. She noticed a few passengers shift uncomfortably, sensing the hostility. Sorry, the young woman who had offered her formula stood again, her voice trembling with anger. This is outrageous. She's a mother with a hungry baby. Why are you treating her like this? Her defiance drew murmurs of agreement from some passengers, but others hissed for her to sit down, wary of escalating the situation. Vikram whirled on Sari. You're causing a disturbance, she barked. If you don't sit down, I'll have you removed from this flight when we land. Her hand hovered near her radio, as if ready to call for backup. The threat hung heavy in the air, and Amara's heart raced. She knew how quickly things could spiral in Kalaya, where airline staff wielded significant authority, and security forces were not known for leniency. The idea of being met by airport police, or worse, private security hired by Horizon Air, sent a chill down her spine. The older woman across the aisle, whose name tag on her bag read Mrs. Lonnie, spoke up, her voice calm but firm. Young woman, I've flown for decades, and I've never seen a mother treated so poorly. Give her the water. It's not hard. Her words carried the weight of experience, but Vikram's glare only hardened. I'm following protocol, Vikram said through gritted teeth. If you all don't stop, I'll report this to the captain, and there will be consequences. The word consequences lingered, heavy with unspoken implications. Amara's mind flashed to stories she'd heard of passengers detained at Kalayan airports, sometimes for hours, over minor disputes. The stakes felt higher now, not just for her, but for Sari and Mrs. Lonnie, who had dared to speak up. Amara reached out, touching Sari's arm gently. Thank you, but please, don't get in trouble for me, she whispered. Sari's eyes blazed with frustration, but she nodded reluctantly and sat down. Amara turned to Vikram, her voice low but resolute. I just want to feed my son. If you won't help, I'll use what I have. She pulled a small thermos of lukewarm water from her bag, her hands shaking as she mixed the formula. Kale's cries softened as he began to drink, but the tension in the cabin remained electric. Across the continent in Vyandra, Rian Pratama sat in a sleek conference room, wrapping up a meeting with executives from Nexus Technologies, a global tech firm he represented. Rian was the lead negotiator for a $500 million contract to deploy an advanced flight management system across a major airline's fleet. Horizon Air was the frontrunner, but another carrier, Star Wing, was a close contender. The deal was critical, not just for Nexus, but for Kalaya's aviation industry, which was vying to modernize. Rian's phone buzzed with a text from Lila, Amara's friend. Haven't heard from Amara since she boarded. Everything okay? Rian frowned, his gut tightening. Amara always texted him once the plane was airborne, a quick, we're good, to ease his mind. He tried calling her, but the call went to voicemail. Assuming it was a connectivity issue, he pushed down his worry and focused on the meeting. But the unease lingered, a quiet warning that something was wrong. Back on the flight, the situation took a darker turn. A second flight attendant, a woman named Nita, approached Amara's row, her expression stern. Ma'am, we've had complaints about the disturbance, she said, her voice clipped but less hostile than Vikram's. I need to ensure this doesn't escalate further. Amara's heart sank. I'm sorry, but my son was hungry. I asked for hot water, and I was refused. I've done my best to calm him. Her voice wavered, but she held Nita's gaze. Nita's eyes softened slightly, but her tone remained formal. I understand, but we have policies about hot liquids during flight. We'll try to assist when we can. She paused, glancing at Vikram, who was watching from the galley with a scowl. Please keep the situation calm. Amara nodded, but the weight of the encounter pressed down on her. She felt trapped, caught between her need to care for Kale and the growing hostility of the crew. The cabin felt like a powder keg, with Vikram's aggressive demeanor fueling the tension. Sorry, still fuming, scribbled a note and passed it discreetly to Amara. I'm with you. This isn't right. The small act of solidarity gave Amara a flicker of strength, but she couldn't shake the fear that this was far from over. As the flight continued, whispers spread among the passengers. Some expressed outrage at Vikram's behavior, while others muttered about disruptive passengers, their frustration aimed at Amara. Mrs. Lonnie leaned over again, her voice barely audible. "Don't let them break you, dear. You're doing nothing wrong." Her words were a lifeline, but Amara's nerves were frayed. She clutched Kale, who was now dozing fitfully, and prayed for the flight to end. In Viandra, Rian's meeting concluded, but his unease grew. He checked his phone again. No message from Amara. He sent another text to Lila. Still no word. "Let me know if you hear anything." His mind raced with possibilities, from technical issues to something far worse. Rian's father, a former labor rights advocate, had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, they were screaming that something was amiss. He opened his laptop, scanning emails for updates on the Horizon Air contract. A message from the airline's CTO caught his eye, confirming a final pitch meeting in 10 days. Rian's influence over the $500 million deal was immense, but his thoughts were consumed by Amara's silence. Back on the plane, the pilot announced the descent into Laraya. Amara's relief was tempered by dread. Vikram's earlier threats echoed in her mind, and she braced for the possibility of security waiting at the gate. As the plane touched down, the cabin erupted in the usual flurry of activity, passengers grabbing bags, checking phones, and shuffling toward the exit. Amara gathered her things, her hands trembling as she secured Kale in his harness. Nita approached again, her expression uneasy. "Ma'am, there's been a report of a disturbance. Security may meet us at the gate to discuss." Amara's heart lurched. The idea of facing airport security in Kalaya, where disputes could escalate quickly, filled her with terror. She clutched Kale tighter, whispering, "We'll be okay, little one." But the weight of the unknown pressed down, and the cabin's eyes felt like daggers. As the door opened, 2 uniformed security officers boarded, their faces stern. Vikram pointed at Amara, her voice carrying across the cabin. "That's her." Humiliation burned through Amara as passengers turned to stare. Sari stood, her voice sharp. "She did nothing wrong. You're targeting a mother for trying to feed her baby." The officers raised their hands, signaling for calm, but the tension was palpable. Amara's pulse raced as she prepared to face whatever came next, knowing this moment could change everything. The Horizon Air flight to Laraya had landed, but for Amara Suryani, the ordeal was only intensifying. Clutching her 4-month-old son, Kale, she stood at the aircraft's threshold, her pulse racing as 2 stern-faced security officers boarded the cabin. Vikram, the flight attendant whose dismissive hostility had fueled the conflict, pointed at Amara, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "That's her." Humiliation seared Amara as passengers turned to stare, some with pity, others with judgment. Sorry, the young woman who had offered formula, stood defiantly, her voice sharp. "She did nothing wrong. You're targeting a mother for trying to feed her baby." The officers raised their hands, signaling calm, but the tension was a live wire, threatening to spark chaos. Amara's mind raced as she followed the officers down the jet bridge, Kale's weight grounding her despite the terror clawing at her chest. Mrs. Lonnie, the older woman who had spoken up, trailed behind, her expression resolute despite her slow steps. Sari followed, ignoring Vikram's glare, her phone discreetly recording the scene. In Kalaya, where airline authority often went unchecked and security forces could be ruthless, Amara knew the stakes were dire. Stories of passengers detained for hours, or worse, blacklisted from future flights, haunted her. She whispered to Kale, "Stay strong, my love," drawing strength from his soft breaths. At the gate, a small office awaited, its fluorescent lights harsh against the early morning haze filtering through the terminal windows. The officers, one named Captain Jaya and the other officer Mira, sat Amara down, their faces unreadable. Captain Jaya spoke first, his tone clipped. "We've received a report of a disturbance involving you and other passengers. Explain your actions." Amara's voice trembled but held firm. "My son was hungry. I asked for hot water to make his formula, but the flight attendant, Vikram, refused. I waited over 20 minutes, and my baby was crying. I only wanted to care for him." She recounted the events, Vikram's dismissive tone, the threats of consequences, and the hostility that had escalated despite her calm pleas. Sari, standing by the door, interjected, "I saw it all." She was polite. "Vikram was cruel, and now you're punishing a mother for nothing." Officer Myra's eyes flickered with something sympathy, perhaps, but she remained silent. Captain Jaya scribbled notes, his pen scratching loudly in the tense silence. We'll need statements from the crew, he said, glancing at Vikram, who had entered with Nita, the second flight attendant. Vikram's expression was defiant, her arms crossed. The passenger was disruptive, she insisted. Her baby's crying disturbed everyone, and she demanded special treatment. I followed protocol. Nita hesitated, her gaze darting between Vikram and Amara. There were complaints, she said softly, but the situation could have been handled differently. Her words were cautious, a crack in the united front Vikram expected. Amara's heart lifted slightly, but the weight of Vikram's accusation pressed down. Captain Jai's eyes narrowed. We'll review the statements and decide next steps. You may face a fine or further questioning. The threat of a fine, or worse, detention, sent a chill through Amara. In Kalaya, airline disputes could spiral into legal nightmares, especially for someone like her, a woman of mixed heritage often scrutinized in subtle ways. She thought of Rian, unaware of her plight, negotiating a deal that could reshape their future. The irony was bitter. Horizon Air, the airline now threatening her, was a frontrunner for his $500 million contract. Across the continent in Vyandra, Rian Pratama's unease had grown into dread. Lila's latest text, still no word from Amara. I'm worried. Not at him. He stepped out of the Nexus Technologies office, the sleek skyline of Vyandra blurring as he dialed Amara again. Voicemail. His mind churned with possibilities, a delayed flight, a lost phone, or something worse. Rian's father, a labor rights advocate, had warned him about Kalaya's aviation industry, where corporate power often trumped passenger rights. He texted Lila, check with the airline. I'm heading to Laraya if I don't hear soon. Back in the interrogation room, the situation grew darker. Captain Jai's radio crackled, and after a brief exchange, he stood. We need to escalate this to airport management, he said. There's a claim of unauthorized recording. His eyes locked on Sari, who paled but held her phone tightly. Amara's stomach dropped. Sari's recording could expose Vikram's behavior, but in Kalaya, filming airline staff without consent could lead to severe penalties. I was documenting an injustice, Sari said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Mrs. Lonnie stepped forward, her voice firm. She's protecting a mother. You should be investigating the airline, not us. The officers exchanged glances, and Mira escorted Sari to a separate room, confiscating her phone. Amara's heart sank. Her allies were being targeted, and she felt powerless. As Captain Jaya left to consult management, Vikram smirked faintly, a flicker of triumph that ignited Amara's resolve. She wouldn't let this break her. She began mentally drafting a complaint, determined to hold Horizon Air accountable, even if it meant risking her own safety. Meanwhile, in Vyandra, Rian's phone buzzed with a forwarded message from Lila, a passenger's post on X, tagged #HorizonAir, describing a shocking incident on the Sarawak-Laraya flight. The post, from an anonymous account, detailed a mother being harassed by a flight attendant and now facing security. Attached was a blurry photo of Amara holding Kale, her face etched with distress. Rian's blood ran cold. He called his contact at Nexus Technologies, his voice tight. We need to talk about Horizon Air. Their conduct may jeopardize the deal. The $500 million contract, once a sure bet, now hung in the balance. Back at Laraya Airport, Amara was allowed to feed Kale in the office, but the atmosphere remained oppressive. Mrs. Lonnie sat beside her, whispering encouragement. You're stronger than they know. Amara nodded, but fear gnawed at her. What if she was detained? What if Kale was taken from her? The thought was unbearable. When Captain Jaya returned, his expression was grim. Management wants a formal inquiry, he said. You'll need to remain here until we resolve this. Amara's resolve hardened. I want to file a complaint against Vikram and Horizon Air, she said, her voice steady. This isn't just about me, it's about every passenger treated this way. Jaya raised an eyebrow, but Mira nodded slightly, a subtle acknowledgement. The tide was shifting, however faintly. Outside, Sari's ex-post, uploaded before her phone was taken, was gaining traction, with hashtags like #JusticeForAmara trending in Kalaya. Passengers from the flight shared their accounts, amplifying the outrage. As the inquiry loomed, Amara clutched Kale, her heart a mix of fear and defiance. Rian, now racing to book a flight to Laraya, was unaware of the social media storm but driven by a gut instinct to protect his family. Horizon Air's facade of passenger-first service was cracking, and the reckoning Amara had unknowingly sparked was only beginning. The small interrogation room at Laraya Airport felt like a cage, its stark walls closing in as Amara Suryani cradled her son, Kale, his soft gurgles a fragile anchor in the storm. The threat of detention loomed, with Captain Jaya's words, a formal inquiry, echoing in her mind. Vikram's accusation of disruption had painted Amara as the aggressor, but the faint nod from Officer Mira and Nita's hesitant admission hinted at cracks in Horizon Air's narrative. Outside, the hashtag Justice for Amara movement was gaining momentum on X, with passengers' posts exposing Vikram's hostility. Amara, unaware of the digital uprising, steeled herself for the fight ahead, determined to protect her dignity and demand accountability. Captain Jaya returned, accompanied by a suited man introduced as Mr. Tan, Horizon Air's regional manager. His polished demeanor contrasted with the tension in the room. "Miss Suryani," he began, his voice measured, "we take passenger complaints seriously, but disruptions impact safety. We're reviewing all statements." Amara's resolve hardened. "I wasn't disruptive," she said, her voice steady. "I asked for hot water to feed my son. Your staff refused and threatened me. I want a formal apology and an investigation into Vikram's conduct." Mr. Tan's eyes flickered, but before he could respond, Officer Mira interjected, holding a tablet. "Sir, there's something you should see." She displayed a video of Sari's recording, uploaded to X before her phone was confiscated. The grainy footage captured Vikram's sharp dismissal, "Sit down and deal with it," and her threat to have Sari removed. Passengers' murmurs of outrage were audible, and Amara's calm pleas stood in stark contrast. Mr. Tan's face tightened, his composure slipping as the video ended. "This changes things," Mira said, her tone firm. "The public is reacting strongly. We need to resolve this fairly." Captain Jaya nodded, his earlier sternness softening. Vikram, standing by the door, paled, her defiance crumbling as Mr. Tan turned to her. "You'll be suspended pending an internal review," he said curtly. Vikram opened her mouth to protest, but a sharp look from Tan silenced her. Nita, visibly relieved, offered Amara a small nod, a silent apology for her earlier silence. Amara's heart lifted, but the ordeal wasn't over. Mr. Tan turned to her. "We'll waive any fines and ensure no further action against you or the other passengers. We'll also issue a statement addressing this incident." Amara shook her head. "That's not enough. I want a public apology for how I was treated and a commitment to train your staff better. This can't happen to anyone else." Her words carried the weight of every slight she'd endured, not just on this flight but throughout her life in Kalaya. Mr. Tan hesitated, but the growing noise outside, reporters gathering at the terminal, alerted by the X-posts, forced his hand. "Very well," he conceded. "We'll meet your demands." As Amara signed a release form, Sari was brought back, her phone returned. Her eyes blazed with triumph. "The video's gone viral," she whispered. "People are demanding change." Mrs. Lani, waiting outside, embraced Amara, her voice fierce. "You've done something big, child." In Vyandra, Rian Pradama boarded a flight to Laraya, his mind a whirlwind of fear and fury. The X-post with Amara's photo had exploded, with thousands of shares and comments condemning Horizon Air. Rian's call to Nexus Technologies had sparked a crisis meeting, with executives questioning Horizon's reliability. As his plane took off, he received an email from Horizon's CTO pleading to salvage the $500 million deal. Rian's response was curt, "Your airline's values don't align with ours. We're reconsidering Starwing." The decision wasn't final, but the threat was clear. Horizon's reputation was unraveling. At Laraya Airport, Amara emerged from the office, Kale asleep in her arms. Reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing as she stepped into the terminal. Sari and Mrs. Lani flanked her, their presence a shield. A journalist thrust a microphone forward. "Ms. Suryani, what happened on that flight?" Amara took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. "I was a mother trying to feed my son. Horizon Air failed me, but I'm not alone. We deserve respect, and I won't stop until they change." Her words, broadcast live, ignited a firestorm. By evening, Horizon Air issued a public apology admitting unacceptable conduct by staff and pledging comprehensive retraining. Vikram was formally suspended, and an independent audit of the airline's practices was announced. The hashtag Justice for Amara hashtag trended globally, with Kalayan activists calling for broader reforms in the aviation industry. Amara's story became a symbol of resilience, amplifying voices long ignored. Rian's flight landed in Laraya that night. He raced to the hotel where Amara was staying, guided by Lila's updates. When he saw Amara, holding Kale, relief flooded him. They embraced, tears mingling as Amara recounted the ordeal. Rian's anger at Horizon Air was tempered by pride in her strength. "You've changed things," he said, his voice thick. I'm pulling the deal from Horizon. Starwing's getting it. Amara nodded, her eyes fierce. Make them earn it. No one should feel powerless. The next day, Amara and Rian visited her grandmother, whose 70th birthday had sparked the journey. The celebration was bittersweet, overshadowed by the ordeal but enriched by Amara's courage. Her grandmother, tears in her eyes, held Kale close. You fought for him, she said. You fought for us all. Sorry, now a friend joined them, sharing plans to launch a passenger rights campaign inspired by Amara. Mrs. Lonnie sent a letter, her words a blessing. You've lit a spark, dear. Keep it burning. 2 weeks later, at the vow renewal ceremony in Sariwan's Orchid Haven Resort, Amara stood beside Rian, radiant despite the scars of her ordeal. Relatives cheered as they reaffirmed their love, Kale giggling in Lila's arms. Horizon Air's deal with Nexus Technologies was officially awarded to Starwing, a blow that forced the airline to overhaul its leadership. The industry took note, with new regulations proposed in Kalaya to protect passengers. Amara's complaint, backed by thousands online, led to a compensation fund for mistreated passengers, her name etched in its legacy. As Amara danced with Rian under the stars, she felt a quiet victory. The flight that had tested her had also forged her, turning a moment of humiliation into a movement for justice. Kale's laughter rang out, a reminder that resilience could reshape the world.